to know what was wrong. I had to find out what it was. And
the first thing I wanted to have is no toxic cleaning products.
Just because you have brain change doesn't mean you can't still do things. You may do it differently. You might need more time.
I decided to turn my disability into my ability, and around 7th and 8th grade, I started playing able-bodied sports.
If we were knowledgeable, if we were educated, we would have solved science earlier.
You battle and you battle for every single inch of help.
A New Perspective, hosted by Tim Sutton.
This broadcast is produced by Griffo Productions. Brought to you by A Better Understanding, giving you a better understanding.
Hey everybody, this is Tim Sutton. Welcome back for a Tuesday night where I can hopefully give you a new perspective. Thank you if you've observed or watched some of the shows before. I appreciate you returning, and hope each show you've watched, you've learned something and come away appreciating the fact that you watched it. If you're not familiar with me, I'm a law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia, working on my 34th year. And for the past 20 years, I've done a lot of work with families who are dealing with disabilities, which I prefer to call differabilities, because everybody has abilities. They just sometimes do things a little differently. So what I try to do with this new perspective is to bring you people who are making a difference in the differability community, people who get to share their story about how they're advocating for people with differabilities, as well as people with those special abilities coming on and showing you what they're capable of doing, the amazing things. And, we're going to stay on topic this week, but it's a topic that I don't think a lot of people really pay much attention to, is what we eat, what we put in our bodies. And the more I research things about food and how food's being processed these days, it makes me a little leery to eat certain foods or head down this path or that path or this diet. But what we're going to do today, we've got the Allergy Chef, and we've got Kathleen is going to be with us, and she's going to talk to us about her endeavor, her life dealing with food and some of the allergies that are related to foods. I know growing up, I never heard anybody having an allergy to peanuts or tree nuts and things, but it's evolved, and there's so many allergies being found out there that are affecting everyday life. And I just want to bring her on, and the Allergy Chef, to explain what she does, why she does it, and how she goes about it, and how hopefully you can make contact with her. So Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well,
I love your take on disability and differability. How do I say it? I want to say it right. Differability. Yeah. No, I think that's really cool, because you're absolutely right. And, the hard truth is everybody has something going on, right? Nobody is living some perfect, idyllic life where nothing is wrong. So I think we can all show each other a little sympathy and empathy in one way or another.
I think empathy goes a long ways, and that's kind of why I do what I do. I don't live the journey that a lot of people are on, but I realize that everybody has their unique journey, and sometimes they just need people to have a better understanding of what they're dealing with. And it's up to us, everybody, to help each other through their tough situations and be support and advocate for them.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So a little bit about who I am. So I was diagnosed with more than 200 food allergies and food intolerances. I can't drink most water. I have contact and airborne allergies, which means certain things, if I touch it, I will have an allergic reaction to it. The number of symptoms I have is in the hundreds, and I pretty much am a mimicker. I mimic regular illnesses, rare illnesses, major illnesses. You could take me to 15 different specialists, and they would each diagnose me with what they specialize in just based on my symptoms. You can cherry pick symptoms that much.
Right.
Job's disease, cancer, everything. I've literally walked a mile in so many people's shoes, and that's really what makes it so different. But on top of that, I've managed a household where everyone pretty much has a different food need. And our oldest, he wasn't diagnosed as on the spectrum, but he was borderline. And the doctors actually told us, because of what his biological mother had done to him, they would never be able to give us a solid answer. Is he on the spectrum, or is this a side effect of what she did?
Right.
And so we sort of had to like wade through this super gray area that not a lot of people walk through. And so between him and, well, pretty much all the boys, everybody had something. And so it led me down this road where I was learning everything I could about food, you know, and you couple that with how sick I was. And so it created a situation where you're forced to learn all this stuff, but it's kind of like what you said, right? It's like, once you learn it, you can't unsee the truth. And you're like, wait, they put what in the food? Wait, they did what? Hold on. That's legal? Like you go down these roads and you're like, who even had this idea? Like, at what point did someone say, you know what we should do? Let's poison the air, the water, and the food. Wouldn't that be so smart? Like, oh my goodness, you know, and usually it's done to make a buck, you know, and the crazy thing is you look at World War II and the time right after that. So right after World War II, we have this huge spike in advertising and consumerism, like materialism, right? And so we're telling people, buy. And then we're saying, women, go to work, leave your home, let somebody else raise your kids, usually the state or whatever. And now I want you to go to the grocery store and I want you to buy this new and improved, you know, freezer food or microwave food. All
TV
these
dinner, the TV dinner.
Exactly. And now we want you to sit in front of your TV and just eat mindlessly. And so when we look at like from mid to late 40s to late 50s, in my personal opinion, for people in this particular boat, that was really our downfall, right?
Wow.
That's when food went from becoming, it's like if you talk to someone in their 80s or more, they think organic is a scam because for them, everything was organic, like through the first half of their life. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff got introduced. But it wasn't like they were going, by the way, guys, we sprayed your food with all this stuff. Like nobody was advertising, like, you know, to the high heavens what they had done. They were just doing it. And then people started getting sick and sicker. And then when you look at the history of recorded history here in not just the United States, but in the world, we've never had a population of people more sick than what we have right now, ever. And then you look at how much money is spent on what I like to call sick care, because it's not really health care. They're not helping your health. They're keeping you sick. You look at how much money is being spent on that. We've never spent that kind of money on anything before. And yet we're not seeing results. Gee, I wonder why, right? You know, we look at all these different elements. And while I love talking about food, I love to also remind people too, like it's more than just food, right? It's those 5 pillars of health. It's air, water, food, movement, and medicine. It's these 5 things. And medicine can be like supplements, pharma, whatever, right? It's all these things that no one is studying the combined effect. But the hard truth is we're living the combined effect, right? When we look at the rate of people who are diagnosed with neurological differences, and then we look at how food is processed, et cetera. In fact, let's take a very specific, let's narrow in the year 1997. That was the year that the food allergy diagnosis rate exploded. Like if you were looking at a chart, it goes like this, and then it just goes like this. 1997 was the year. 1997 was the year Monsanto was allowed to release GMOs on the public like wildfire. Okay. And so the thing is like, some people want to say, well, vaccines cause autism. I agree with you in some people. Some people love to say, you know, it's what's in the air that's causing all these health problems. I agree with you in some people. You know, that's the key here. Because no two people are the same, and it would be completely unethical to try to study this. Like, you know, what are you going to do? Take a set of twins and put one in a bubble and put one in the real world and see what happens? Like, there's no ethical way at this point to figure out the combined effect. All you can do now is look at it. And the problem with so many modern day scientists, they're like, well, we don't want 17 variables. We just want one. Well, that's the problem. There are 17 variables. And if you don't look at all 17, you're not really looking at the problem. You are taking such a narrow view that you're going to get skewed results, right? And it doesn't help that, again, no two people are the same. You and I could each eat the exact same meal and respond completely differently to that input, right?
And with autism, like the one thing you teach is that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I'll tell you what's interesting. It's very, and I was watching this last night, did not know it was going to pop up, but it's some show that Down to Earth, I think Zac Efron has done a couple seasons, but they were actually over in France. And apparently France has the purest water. I mean, they even have it out on the streets and water fountains, but it's the purest water on the planet that they provide, and they're not adding chemicals or anything. And they say, most of your bottled waters, a lot of them are just tap water put in the bottle.
Yeah.
But they actually they encourage people, and they showed a vending machine actually had water bottles in there, not full water bottles, but kind of the ones you go hiking with, that you could purchase from the vending machine to fill up out on the street. And you could actually get the carbonated water, which all they did is put some CO2 in it to make it bubbly. But yeah, they were talking about how that water is so much more pure than most places you're going to find in the world.
Yeah. So I know you know the term canary in a coal mine.
Yes.
And that's what I am. I am a canary in the coal mine. So when we found out I was allergic to water, the specialist I was working with, he reached out to a whole bunch of his network of people, and everybody was so baffled by it because, I didn't show the traditional signs of a true water allergy.
Right.
As it turns out, I'm allergic to the processing of water. It's what happens when it goes through the system, right? Well, there's a company here in the United States called Summit Spring. They make what's called Maine raw water. It's the only company in the United States that has an exemption to not treat or process the water. Oh, wow. Everybody else, I don't care what you're buying or where you're getting it from, they have processed that water. There's something in it. I guarantee you, right? And so turns out that was the water that ended up saving my life, because I was down to less than 2 ounces of water a day. I literally could not drink water. It was like swallowing razor blades,
Well, and I know reading your story on when did you notice or start to realize there was an issue in your body? It was as a child, correct?
I would say, I've known since I was born, right? You can't be an obese kindergartner and think you're normal. Like that just doesn't work.
Right.
I would probably say somewhere in my 20s is when I really started to pick up on it. Because, when you think about the development of the human brain, right? We know that the brain develops pretty well. Like at 25, you're pretty set. And I'd actually probably guess that's probably when, a lot of higher order thinking kicked in for me and said, you know what? This is not right. And the thing is, though, I think what really helps my particular situation and makes me really who I am, I was born a skeptic. Right. I was legitimately born a skeptic.
Right.
And I don't say that lightly. I've never trusted authority. I've never trusted what most people say. I'm always like, tell me why, give me the reasons. Let me look for myself. When I was a kid, I taught myself how to read when I was like 2.5 years old, because they would spell in front of me. And I was so offended. I was so offended. And I went and taught myself how to read. And this is the sad part of the story. I didn't know how to keep it to myself. So the next time they spelled in front of me, I was like, ha, I know what that means.
You broke the code.
I did. And then they stopped spelling in front of me. And then as a kid, I was like, I did all that work for nothing. Obviously learning how to read is a big deal, but from my child logic, I was like, I can't believe I did all that. And now
I could have been coloring and doing all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. I could have done so much, but that's who I am at my core, right? I am a dig deep, do the hard work, look under every rock. And so because of that, I think it helped me because, at the time I was going to some Western style doctors and they were all pretty much putting the blame on me for why I was sick and why I was this and why I was that and wanted to give me a pill for every ill. And I was like, hold on, are you even listening to me? I literally just told you XYZ. So that skeptic in me was like, they're not telling you something, right? What's really going on here?
Well, do they really even know?
What's so interesting? So in helping so many people, I've been told, especially a lot recently, more than what the doctors were able to tell me. Now, I think that's a cool compliment, but at the same time, I'm scared for people. I shouldn't know more, right? I should be like the extra, the little, cherry on top. The doctors should absolutely be able to tell you, boom, 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 boom. And this is what it means. And apparently they're just handing out a diagnosis and walking away. And I'm like, hold on. In fact, several years ago, a friend and I were joking sort of about it because her kid was given a diagnosis of a seed allergy. And she says to me, yeah, and they didn't tell me what it meant. I was like, what do you mean they didn't tell you what it meant?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
She's like, yeah, they said he's allergic to seeds, don't eat seeds. And that was it. That was the end of the appointment. I was like, and then I said, and I was sort of joking at the time. I said, you know what? I'm just going to write a manual. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write a manual. I'm going to tell everybody what everything means and then make every doctor hand it out because I'm so sick of this, right? People should know what's what. Well, sure enough, I've been writing a manual and it's huge and it hopefully will be published in the next few months. And it's something that if you get it the day you're diagnosed, it literally
Right.
spells it out for you. Did you just get diagnosed with this? This is what it means. This is what
Wow.
you avoid. These are the hidden terms. This is where you can get more information. Like, this is a product you can eat. Like, it's the information that I guess doctors aren't handing out, and that's the thing. When we go back to looking at autism, for example,
Right.
years ago, there was a doctor here in the SF Bay Area who had published a piece that basically said diet will do nothing to affect ADHD, and autism type disorders. I was so offended because I had already proven it twice
Right.
for two of
Right.
our kids. So our oldest was misdiagnosed with ADHD. And I say misdiagnosed because the pills did not help. Nothing helped. It did not work. And again, the skeptic in me was like, why are we putting him on these pills?
Right.
How is this supposed to help? What are
And
we
what side
actually
effects are the
treating?
pills causing?
Exactly. Right.
Right.
And so we got him off of that. And I started, doing a lot of research, which is what I do.
Right.
And then I started messing with his diet, like a lot. Interestingly, camel's milk made a big change in him in terms of mood. And that was like really interesting. And then we did the GAPS diet for a while. That saw very little to no improvement. And it was really hard. Like that one, honestly, if you were to ask me what diet type out of all the diet types, because it's more than just this, GAPS or SCD, which is specific carbohydrate diet, which they're very similar. That's literally the hardest diet to maintain, like hard pass. So if you need that one, like you're in it for the long haul. And usually they want people on it for about 3 years and then you transition off of it. But those are some really hard years. And so I ended up doing juicing, right? Because obviously toxicity is a huge part of like people with neurological disorders, right? If you are like, when we look at what it is and we kind of peel it back, it's number one, how did you get into this boat? Were you born this way or was it a side effect of something else that happened to you post-birth, right? And we suspected vaccines for our oldest as one of the issues. And so we started just looking at, what would it look like to detox? And so I started sort of including certain foods and then we moved into juicing. The juice diet, it was really hard for the first 5 days or so. And like you could see it, right? Like the kids were pale and like they were sick and and I was ready to call it quits. But then he wakes up and he's like, I can think. I was like, what? He's like,
when you're going through that process, you're going through withdrawals. That's basically what it is. You're going through withdrawals.
Yeah. So you are going with withdrawals. And I do want to clarify this statement. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who choose to do vaccines. I think that you've got to do what's best for you. And again, it's just how, Tylenol is not for everyone, right? Not everything is for everyone. And unfortunately, we can't predict who's going to react and how. And it's just a matter of how do we deal with it after the fact, right? And so for us, when we were dealing with it, that's what it was. And so with the juicing, it was like, he was suddenly able to think clearly and function. And what was so interesting about him specifically, once we just went back into smoothies, because then we had to transition back into solid foods. Even with smoothies, he lost a lot of progress. And I was like, wow, like it really went to show that his GI tract was some kind of crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like and we never got back to that high of the peak from juicing because you can't keep a kid on juice forever. It's just not sustainable. So that really gave me insight into just how powerful food is and that food really is medicine. And so even though I'm really into free from like gluten-free, dairy-free, all the frees, I am also like a nutrition junkie at heart. It's not something I talk about a lot, mainly because people look at all my pictures of cake because they look so pretty and they're like, "Ooh, I want cake," right? I mean, we all want cake and ice cream and cookies, made with better for you ingredients, but still cake and cookies. But at my core, I am all about, okay, how can I boost the nutrition, right? How much nutrition is this? Like if I grab a handful of sprouts, throw it in this smoothie, will anybody notice? One of my favorite recipes that I made probably a year or two ago, they're called boosted brownies because there's spinach, blueberry, mushroom, and I think one other boost in it. but and then they're refined sugar free, and they just use less sugar in general. And they're
Right.
more of like a cakey brownie than a fudgy brownie.
Right.
But if you add chocolate chips on top, one of my kids who hates all things boosted, like they know if it's been boosted,
Right.
she was like, "I'll eat the whole tray." And I was like, "Yeah," you know. It was great because I think that to me that's the thing we should be seeking. Like, yes,
Right.
okay, we all need to eat an apple a day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we need to have some fun too. And if we can boost that fun, then it's even better.
Well, I
and
think
so-
the biggest thing in our whole society, it's gotten to the point where people live to eat, and they're not eating just to live and, to be functionable, but they're more like they're just living to eat, and they want this, they want that, want that, want this. And to be able to go back and realize, what you need to eat, but what you need to eat are things that you need to put in your body to keep functioning properly.
Well, and I think that that's honestly something wrong with our school systems right now.
Mhm.
I think what would be genius, obviously we need to have gardens at schools from
Yeah.
preschool and up. But I mean, imagine a world where in grade 12, instead of forcing you to study all this crazy stuff, we teach you how to grow food. We teach
Right.
you how to be a good citizen. We teach you how to cook, how to take care of things. Like, we teach you the
Right.
real life skills that you actually need, not just how to memorize facts and repeat them. And we
Right.
also teach you critical thinking, not what to think, but how to think.
Right.
How much better would our world be if that's what every kid in grade 12 did? That's all you do for the whole year, right?
Right.
And maybe you get to dabble in different trades. This whole idea that everybody has to go to college, like, no, thank you, right? College is not for everyone. And I think
No,
it's
it's
one
not.
of the greatest lies like pushed on society. Like, trade schools are awesome. There are so many people who would flourish just getting their hands dirty and,
Right.
working with clay or working with wood or being a mechanic, without all that added pressure of, oh, and here's your $50,000 billion bill, for
Right.
going to college or whatever. And it's like, we've kind of ripped off the next generation. And now it's
Yeah.
our job to figure out, how do we fix this mess?
How do we get our car fixed? Because we don't
Right.
have anybody that's trained up in a trade. Or how do we get the, HVAC working, or the electricity here or there? It's, and even, my job being a law enforcement, being a police officer, it's gotten to the point where they want college or military college. And I'm thinking, honestly, this job in law enforcement, you really don't need a college degree to do this job. I'll tell you, the one thing you do need to do this job is common sense. And unfortunately, common sense is not all that common.
No,
But
it's not.
to be a police officer, you need to have common sense. I don't honestly know what that degree does that makes you worthy of being a law enforcement officer in certain places, but it's a piece of paper. And my
Yeah.
degree I got a business degree, and I've got a degree, but I don't think it makes me a better police officer or better supervisor.
Do you think that, and I could be wrong, do you think that police officers would benefit from a specialty degree for police officers, similar to the academy, but perhaps where you guys do, like psychology and just understanding people better? Because at the end of the day,
Right.
police officers are usually, unless you're like CHP, which is different in my opinion, your standard police officer, you're meeting someone on the worst day of their life,
Right.
right? You are not walking into a picnic.
Right.
And so if you're not thinking about, how something could escalate or how someone might
Right.
respond to something, or the fact that this person is literally in shock and they're probably not hearing 75% of what you're saying.
Right.
Right? Do those kind of courses,
Right.
is that really what we should be doing for our law enforcement officers?
I think so. If there's something out there that's comparable to what we deal with, our problem is we get very desensitized to things. And, obviously you can't take every call for service, every traumatic experience. And, I make a point not to dwell on it, because it's like, I can't get personally involved in everybody's life, but and I know in the beginning, it's, most of the guys and girls go out there and they respond, and it's a serious situation. And then, they deal with it, adapt to it, and then it happens again, and they get complacent with it, and it doesn't hit us hard. And we get there. And one of the worst things I ever think is you're on a crime scene, a bad crime scene, and you've been there for 10 hours, and you've got officers standing around talking, inevitably somebody's going to say something or they're going to say a joke. And I can tell you the media is going to film them laughing at a crime scene where somebody or some people have been killed. But going into those situations, realizing that, I often refer to getting dressed for work as putting my costume on. Because when people see that uniform, they expect a certain amount of authority and kindness and, sternness or whatever. And even if you're the biggest introvert out there, when you get on scene, everybody's expecting you to take charge. But the thing is, this may be the 10th breaking and entering you've been through that day, and you're tired of taking reports. You're sick and tired of it. But for that person right there that you're dealing with, it is a traumatic experience. That's the first time they've been victimized like that. And to them, it is the biggest deal in the world at that time. So as an officer, it might be the 10th one today that you've dealt with. But when you go there, you better act like it's the most important thing to you at that time. And, you don't want to call it acting, but I think, having the courses like that to train us up, some are going to be receptive, some are not. Some see law enforcement still is going out there arresting bad guys and writing tickets. But we've become problem solvers. We're social workers now because we're getting the calls. And I can tell you, literally, a gentleman went into a Walmart one night, bought a pair of windshield wipers, didn't know how to put them on. So who'd he call? He called us.
Did he really?
Yes. And when neighbors are cutting their grass and shooting the grass in their yard, in their neighbor's yard, the neighbor's calling us saying, hey, would you go tell them not to do that? Well, have you approached them and asked? No, that's your job. So that's what's gotten to be really difficult with the job. I mean, why do people call 911? Because we show up. And like you alluded to, firefighters, everybody loves firefighters. Yeah, the firefighters show up, everybody's loving that. But I can tell you, when police officers showed up to a scene, there's always at least one person there that does not want us there.
Right.
So it's a whole different ball of wax. But and I think a lot of that comes back to the empathy you were talking about, being empathetic. But, our one thing I do when I teach, and I actually learned it from a friend of mine who's a retired FBI agent. A lot of times when I finish teaching, I will hold up like a $50 bill and ask, who wants this $50 bill? And everybody in the class wants it. Then I'll take it and ball it up, crumple it all up. And I'm like, who still wants it? Everybody. Throw it on the floor, step on it, crush it. Who still wants it? Everybody. And I say this $50 bill is no different than anybody else. It doesn't matter how rewired or differently wired your brain is, how much beta amyloid plaque is built up in your brain to give you Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. I said, no matter how messed up that brain is or how hurting that person is, they're just like that $50 bill. They're worth something. So when you're out there interacting with the public, whoever they are, your job is to treat them like they are of importance and they are of value. But you're going to, some people will buy into that. Some officers will, but there's some that are never going to get into it. And our job to go out there and lock up bad guys.
Yeah.
But,
well, and I feel like
it's tough because like you were saying, the doctors, who would expect somebody with a gun and a badge to come sit down at your kitchen table and explain what Alzheimer's is doing to their loved one, where the doctor just said, we believe it's a probable early onset of Alzheimer's. See you later. Bye. Bring in the next copay.
Right.
So,
and the scary thing about doctors, I've spoken with a few who I've got close relationships with, and they were explaining to me just the billing process. Like if you work within those kinds of systems, we're not talking like you own your own practice, you're independent.
Right.
And the rules and regulations on like how many patients they have to see and how fast and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, no wonder they can't really help people. And they were like, exactly. This just how the system is not helping you.
Right.
It's not helping us help you either. Right. It's like it's so messed up. It's so messed up from talking about, and the thing with, you mentioned that you're becoming a social worker. I think part of that too, though, is just people have changed, right? We look at the quality of our grandparents, the kind of people they were, roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, do anything, right?
Right.
And this will bring us back to where we started. Then what happens? What happens when you pollute the air, pollute the water, pollute the food, tell them not to move and sit down and look at this tube of information 24/7.
Right.
And then fast forward 50 years, now every cop's a social worker. No one knows how to interact or have a conversation. The fact that someone wouldn't go to their neighbor and just be like, hey, can you stop the grass?
Oh,
That's mind blowing to me.
oh, I
you
know, but it's
And like,
reality. It's the truth.
no, and I know you're right, but I'm just like, are you serious? Like, are we so far gone from a regular conversation that we can't even be like, keep off my lawn? Like,
Well, and sadly enough, and I remember hearing one last week, they wanted an officer to respond because a 6-year-old refused to go to school. And I'm like, so now you want us to be the parent?
well, okay, so don't even get me started on what's happening with children. Like, honestly, I will see you next week for the next installment of our show, because here's
There
the
you
thing.
go.
What's happening to little kids in schools right now,
Right.
even within, like, it's creeping into private school as well. It's awful what they're doing to these kids. And then again, that combined effect that nobody is studying. Well,
Right.
I don't know about, like, okay, if I, with my current brain and like all the information in it, if you shoved it into the body of a 5 or 6-year-old, and then
Right.
like knowing what I know was like, okay, now go to school, I'd be like, I'm
Right.
not going there. Do not send me to that place. Like,
Right.
I will not, like, you shall not pass, right? It's like that. No, I'm not going. And so we're expecting these very little people, and some of them who might be really, born skeptics just like me.
Right.
They might be like, the jig is up and they're like, I'm not going, and the
Right.
parents are like, you have to go. And it's like, do I really, and
Yeah.
this whole society, like the whole thing that we've done from, again, that World War II era, right?
Right.
Where women stayed home and raised their families, and it was a job you could be proud of,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We sort of like almost like tried to convince people that it wasn't a worthy job.
Right.
And I'm like, no, that's one of the most worthy jobs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's the next generation. These are innocent beings that need our guidance and our love and our care. And if we're not providing it, who is? You know what I mean?
And what are they providing?
Exactly. And what are they providing? Because, a lot of people didn't know what was going on until all of a sudden their kids were at home and they were listening in on these lessons and then going, wait a second, what's going on here? And so we look at all of this and we kind of go, we've pushed ourselves into a corner, right?
Yeah.
As a society. And either it's time to push back, or I don't know that it's going to get better. And, it's like we look at not just the diagnosis rate of, say, like a peanut allergy, like you had said, you hadn't heard of that growing up. A lot of people, probably over the age of, I want to say 45, maybe even 40. No, 30. I want to say 30. If you're 30 and over, you did not grow up with peanut-free classrooms and all this sort of stuff, right? Like, it wasn't a thing. And so if you're 45 and up, you're extra isolated from it. If you're under 45, you're more like on top of it, you're more with it, and then of course the younger you are, just the more you're very aware of it. And today's younger kids, like, everybody knows what an EpiPen is, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the same is true of things like autism. When we look at the diagnosis rate, we rewind, look at how low it was 50 years ago, right? And that's not to say, and that's not to say that it wasn't there. I'm sure it was there. It just wasn't as there. But then we look at now, where it's like 1 in 5 with this, 1 in 10 with this, 1 in 6 with this, 1 in 7 with this. More than 50% of our children are overweight or obese. Like, we start looking at these numbers and I'm sorry, but somebody besides me has got to say, red flag, what's going on here? When are we going to push back? And that's, I guess, really, that really should be our message then, I suppose, today, is that we, the people, cannot wait for someone to come and save us. I think it is irresponsible of any individual to be like, oh, I'll wait for us to legislate our way out of this. No, don't. Go vote with your dollars. Go buy some seeds and plant a garden. Like, go do something about it, right?
Well,
that's the only way we're going to get out of this.
Well, you talk about the organic stuff. The tough thing, we're too into convenience. I mean, organic, obviously, a lot of that's so expensive, and so many families can't afford a lot of the organic stuff. So, and that's where they're going, just buying the cheapest they can find. As long as they got something to put in their stomach, they're okay. But how do you deal with the fact that a lot of that stuff is just so expensive? I know you've got to go to so many different places to find particular foods. And
Yeah.
I'm
So
sure
there's a
a
lot of
your
things people
specialty
can do.
shops.
Number one, I would say everybody should be writing a letter to their representatives, even though they're not representing as well. But you should still write the letter.
Right.
If enough of us write, maybe they'll listen. The government subsidizes food that's cheap. And so you think an organic apple is XYZ compared to the
Right.
one that's, not. The truth is they're basically the same price. The government just
Right.
gives the money to the cheaper farms and they can bring down
Right.
the prices. So that's a whole different problem that's going to take time to solve. And if we don't
Right.
start working on it now, it's just never going to get solved and we keep kicking the can down the road. In the meantime,
Right.
there are several things that we can do to help save money. Number one, go to your farmers markets. That is one of the best ways to find a very affordable amounts of organic produce and quality meats. What's really cool about the farmers markets, so organic certification is a minimum of $10,000. And a lot of farms can't afford it because it's like out of their profit margins, And so
Right.
you'll talk to a farmer and they'll say something such as, we use organic growing practices, but we're not certified, and
Okay.
a lot of them will be like, yeah, you can come by the farm and check it out. We'll give you a tour. Like a lot of them are super chill. And they will charge less because technically they're not having to like recoup the cost of all their certification, et cetera, et cetera. So you can get as good or better than organic for a really great price at a farmer's market. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So that's the first step, is going to your farmer's market.
Okay.
For those who can't get to a farmer's market, maybe you don't live in an area with one, et cetera,
Right.
shop the perimeter of a grocery store. When you hit the middle of a grocery store, prices skyrocket. Okay.
Oh.
That's your convenient items, your packaged items,
Right.
everything that just has a gajillion ingredients, half of which you don't even need anyway. Right.
Right.
When you shop the perimeter, you're looking at the lower cost items. You just are.
Oh.
The next thing to do is look up what's called a CSA. Okay. Now, a CSA is basically where you purchase like a box from a local farm and they give you seasonal produce regularly, like on a timetable, like either every week or every other week. And they'll send you like, I don't know. Well, you can sign up for how many pounds you want. Like I want a 1 pound box, 5 pound, 10 pound, 20 pound, whatever.
Gotcha.
And so you can get that. CSAs are a great way to get local organic produce and support the local economies. The next thing would be imperfect produce. So if you go online and you look up imperfect produce, there's more than one company doing it. But the concept is that they're gathering up all the stuff that can't be sold in grocery stores because it doesn't look pretty enough.
Right.
You know how consumers are, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they're just selling it off to make sure that food doesn't go to waste. And so you're getting squash that are like incredibly crooked or, like weird cuts of things and stuff. It's all
Still
perfect.
taste the same.
Exactly.
No difference,
Tastes good.
but
You can
We've
still
got a grocery chain here locally and up the East Coast, Wegmans, and they actually donate a lot of that to food banks.
Yeah. So that's another way that you can definitely save money. Now with imperfect produce, a lot of them are shipping online, which is really interesting. So you can go online and do it that way.
Right.
And then I would say from there, the other website that I like is called Local Harvest, and they will help connect you with local farms and stuff. That might be another way to help bring your costs down.
Right.
Really, when you get outside of these centralized systems, that's when you start saving money. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and lie to you. It takes up a lot of time, right?
Oh, I'm sure you have
You either got to like, yeah. You're either like driving around to places or calling a lot of places, If you're only dealing with, say, autism and you want to do like the gluten-free, dairy-free diet, GFCF, also known as, or you're looking at GAPS, if you're only looking at that, I think it's going to be easier, right? But you tack on a food allergy or a food intolerance where it's like, okay, I can't do shared equipment with these things, or it can't be processed with XYZ. You're going to be making a lot more calls, doing a lot more work, a lot more heavy lifting. So it really just depends on the individual.
Right.
The other thing too that you can do is find companies like ButcherBox, for example. That's one example. I actually don't purchase through ButcherBox. I've never used them, but they're really popular online. And you can get like quality meats for less. Honestly, the best meat deal I've personally seen is Costco. Costco in our area has organic meats at 50% of the price of everybody else's organic meats because their whole principle is they buy in bulk with cash. And so they're able to get these producers money. So they're like, here, take the goods. And
Oh,
then we
wow.
as Costco members, we benefit, right?
Okay.
So organic meats, because one of our kids needs low, no sugar and as organic as possible. And that
Right.
was the only way we could affordably feed him, was to go to Costco.
Okay.
Anything like, if I were to go to Whole Foods, it was literally 50% more. And you
Oh, I'm
multiply
sure.
that over 4 growing children. I'm like, no, we're going to Costco. And so, but with that though, there are some hidden costs. So for example, you'll need an extra freezer. When you jump into the life that takes you down this road,
Right.
like little things pop up because you're like, okay, I'm exhausted from cooking all day. What's the solution? The solution is batch cooking. It takes you an extra 10 minutes of prep, but you get 3 times the yield, right?
Right.
It's a genius solution, but now you need somewhere to put the food. So now you've got to invest in a freezer. It's going to cost you anywhere between $600 to $1,200. Well, okay. Back in my day, it was $600 to $1,200. You know what's so funny? Okay, you might laugh at this. I didn't know this, but did you know that movie theater tickets aren't $8 anymore? I
was actually discussing that with somebody yesterday.
Okay.
I
legit
couldn't tell you
did
how
not
long it's
know
been.
until recently because someone told me the cost of their ticket and I was like, what? No. Movie theater tickets are like $8. They were like, what world do you live in? I'm like, my bubble world where I've been diagnosed with all this crazy stuff and I haven't left the house for like 15 years. So, you know, $8 was the standard that I went by. Someone else told me recently. Okay, so Subway sandwiches. Last time I knew, it was $8 for a meal at Subway. They paid $20. I was like, did they even get a drink? And that's not even organic. You give me $20, you drop me off at a specific grocery store, I can get you a whole meal for 4 people, totally organic, and you're all fed. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I live in some wild bubble world where things are priced.
Well, how do you cope? I mean, do you go out at all?
So up until recently, no. Like, I mean, so I'm sure you've seen the photo of me with my respirator. Some people think
tell us
it's
about
a
that.
statement. Some people think it's a fashion statement. I've been told I make it look really good. As it turns out, when you have airborne allergies, you literally can't breathe the air, right? It's what's in the air. It's what's on people. It's the food. It's, you know, the airborne allergens. It's all of it. So that respirator, it's a closed circuit. Air comes in, gets filtered, goes back out. And it is the only device that has allowed me to leave the house safely. Now, the downside, it's like having a death grip on your face because it has to stay secure, right? And obviously, before all the lockdowns, everybody looked at me like I was an alien. And there was so much discrimination. It was awful. Like, security was called and I was told to leave the building. Like, I mean, it was bad on some, like, let's just say I had to be a real tough-skinned advocate back in the day, you know?
That's a shame.
But yeah, so now my condition has improved a bit so that I could probably go about an hour without my respirator. So I've gotten out a little bit more, but honestly, like, I don't really need it the way other people do, you know? I mean, like, when you've basically been a house prisoner for as long as I have, like, you just adapt, you get used to it. Like, you turn the inside into a playland for yourself and then you just do whatever, you know? And
so there's no eating out at restaurants or anything like that.
No.
Wow.
No.
And I don't think people realize that. That's, you know, obviously you've made it livable and you're able to do it. I know some people would probably lose their mind.
They would.
And I mean, COVID's an example of that. I mean,
you know, it's so interesting. Once the lockdown started, I had so many people messaging and texting me saying,
how do you do it?
I think I understand even just a little bit now of what your life must be like. And I was like, welcome to the party, you know? And that's the thing. Like, you know, I'm sitting here with a smile on my face and people meet me and they hear my story and they hear how awful it must be. And I'm like, it's not awful. I have cookies. I have ice cream. I have everything I need. I've got a bunch of Lego sets. I've got access to the internet. I'm trying to change the world one bite at a time and nothing's going to stop me. Like, I'm out here to show you that if I can do it with 9 safe ingredients to eat, why can't you with 200? Right? Like, what's stopping you? Nothing.
And you're making cakes and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we had a bakery.
Tell me about that.
So the bakery was really cool. It was gluten-free, vegan, top 9 allergy-free. We also had options for like paleo, grain-free, truly corn-free. Pretty much in all of its operations, there was only ever one person we could not serve, and that was because they didn't call ahead. Had they called ahead, we could have created a custom blend. My whole thing has always been about inclusion and, number one, shoving it in people's faces. Like, if you tell me I can't, I will do it just to prove you wrong. A lot of people don't realize this about me, but like sometimes people are like, so did you get into all of this to really help people? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, really, I just want to prove people wrong. Like
Yeah.
everybody's out there saying you can't have gluten-free that tastes good. And I'm like, oh yeah,
Right.
watch me,
Right.
And so the highlight really of the bakery, like for example, we had one dad like on the verge of tears because he was there with his daughter. She was turning 12. It was her very first birthday cake. Could you
Oh, wow.
imagine going 12 years never having a birthday cake? Like that was her first birthday cake.
Wow.
Because the parents didn't know how to bake and everything they tried
Right.
just did not work,
Right.
and so they just sort of gave up. There was a party. We used to do deliveries. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with like California geography, but San Francisco is like near the top. Los Angeles is near the
Right.
bottom. It's about a 6-hour difference.
Right.
So we would do these LA deliveries probably once or twice a year. And one year we had a kid order, well, a family for their kid, a birthday cake. And it was for a free from child who had friends with food allergies.
Right.
For more than half of the children at the birthday party, it was the first time they ever went to a birthday party and could eat cake at a birthday party. And we're talking 10-year-olds and up here. We're not talking
Right.
little kids.
Right.
This was a big deal. And so, of course, all the parents were like snapping all these photos and sending it
Yeah.
to us. Like, my kid's eating at a birthday party.
Oh
Like
my
it
gosh.
was like the coolest thing, right? So that's what the bakery's done. The bakery, in my opinion, the cool thing too is like people without food allergies, they were like, this is the best cake I've ever eaten. I would have
Oh, I
never
bet.
known free from if you hadn't told me. And I'm like, then I've done my job, right?
Right. Right.
Because people with and people without, they ate it together. They loved it. Celebrations and families coming together and school class parties and, all this inclusion. And that's really what I'm here for. I'm here to show people like, I don't care what your diagnosis is. Really, I
Right.
don't. I mean, like, okay, I sort of care. Like, I care about that stuff, but we can
Right.
shove it aside. We can
Right.
stop dwelling on, oh, woe is me. Oh, this, oh, that,
Right.
and start looking at solutions. Like, we have
Right.
this problem. Cool. I'm going to reinvent these 3 things. Boom. We've got what we need. It's like,
Wow.
somebody asked me, is it possible to have a corn-free Thanksgiving that's also free from, laundry list of
Right.
things? And I'm like, yep. Doodle-doodle-doop. 3,000 words later, I had written out how to have a truly corn-free Thanksgiving with all these things. Like, yeah, you got to reinvent some wheels. You got to put in some elbow grease. But I'm telling you, it's possible. I'm so sick and tired of everybody thinking
Right.
everything is so impossible. Like, it's not.
Right.
And that same message applies to everyone, right? No matter where you are in life, no matter what you're going through, it's
Oh.
possible.
Well, let me just so the viewers know, you've got the allergychef.com.
Yeah.
What are other ways they could get in touch with you to really find out how they can modify their diets or deal with their issues? What kind of contact information have you got for the
I would say
people watching?
start with the allergychef.com because that has links to everything that,
Okay, I
that
noticed
we
a
do.
lot.
And then of course Instagram at the Allergy Chef. Instagram is probably the place where you'll see the most activity, mainly
Okay.
because I'm just not very good at I'm just not good at this stuff. Like it's not my jam. I'm not into social media. But
Well, everybody has their specialty, and it sounds like you got some special stuff.
right. I think it's just funny because, so you were talking about your degree being in business. My degree is in IT and like all that sort of like, I'm one of those people who was back on the internet in the early days, helping build, websites and all
Right.
that sort of stuff. Right. So you
Right.
think someone like me would be really into it. And I'm like, actually stay away. I don't.
Right. And there's so much to keep up with.
Yeah, it's too much. Well, and it's so intrusive these days. I mean, like, I'm really weird. I browse the internet without images or Java or cookies. I just see plain text everywhere I go.
Right.
So I'm the exception to the rule. So if you want
Wow.
to hear from me, check out the Instagram, or if not, check out theallergychef.com. That's going to have all the best stuff, and you can get in touch with us there. My goal is to point you in the right direction, show you the resources, and really just help you on your journey and help you thrive. Because I believe wholeheartedly we can all reach a place of thriving. It doesn't look the same for us all, and it won't be easy for us all.
Right.
But we can reach a place where we are content with what we have. We feel good about it. It's
Right.
nourishing us. It's helping us. Our health condition, whatever it may be, has improved. I do believe we can do that.
What other ventures do you have going on? The bakery, and I noticed some other things on the website. What else do you have going on?
So I would say Raise is the biggest other thing we've got going on, and
Okay.
that is groundbreaking. There's nothing else like it anywhere online. I would say the crown jewel is called the Advanced Recipe Search. It is the most powerful food recipe search engine online for people with restricted diets because it has more than 85 filters where you can filter out individual foods. You can filter out food families and groups, but then you can also do special diet types, which nobody else is like where you can complete it all. And then you can also put in specialty requests like freezer friendly, budget friendly, etc. So you could go in and say, I'm corn free, paleo, vegan, and I need a freezer friendly pizza.
Right.
You could literally put in all those parameters and you get the right results.
And you've put all this together.
Yeah. I spent.
So you've used the IT, degree.
Yeah, I have. Well, what happened was, many years ago, I was given 30 days to live and I survived. And I was like, well, all the stuff in my head's got to get somewhere. And that's really what Raise became. It was a way for me just to brain dump and say, everything that I could do to help everyone, it's there. Like everything you wish you knew the day you were diagnosed, it's all there, and it covers such a huge range of topics. There's 1,300 resources. It's way more than just food. I talk to people about everything, lifestyle, mindset, how to talk to people, how to live, how to thrive, like how to overcome it and just, I don't know, live,
Well, and that's what I noticed. You give them 30 days to live, and then, 30 days went by. So you had another 30 days, and then you had another 30 days. How did that feel just knowing that you were, I don't know if you want to call it beating it, but you were proving them wrong.
It's funny. And it kind of actually felt the opposite. When I was given 30 days, I was like, okay, I'm fine with that. I'm actually really happy because I'm tired of this. It felt like
it was that miserable.
Oh yeah. I mean, like
wow.
you if you were just to like barely touch me, I was in excruciating pain. Like I said, swallowing glass. When everything feels like like it's killing you, you're happy to be done. Because like you're happy to be done, really. You have to realize I grew up with crippling, well, I wouldn't say crippling, but I grew up living with suicidal depression because of undiagnosed food allergies. So to me, the thought of death has always just been normal, right? You don't really undo that in a person. And so when I'm told I'm going to be dead in 30 days, I'm like, okay, cool. That means in 30 days, I'm done. Like all the suffering, it ends, and then an extra 30 days go by and you're like, hey, you said I was going to be done suffering. I'm still suffering. Another 30 days go by and you're like, hey, I'm still suffering here. You said, and then it was like, well, clearly you were wrong and it's time for me to do something. And, it's interesting because one day I was in excruciating pain and I sat and I prayed and I said, Lord, if you make it so that all this pain helps at least one child, I'll never complain. I promise. And honestly, there have been so many kids that have had their lives changed because of what I've gone through. And I think I'm pretty close to staying true to that promise. I don't complain about the diagnosis. I keep trying to look for the solution, right? Don't get me wrong. Some days I'm just tired of cooking and
I'm sure.
Man, there's something else to eat. Or like, I wish I had some ice cream, but there's none in the freezer. Like I make my own safe ice cream and stuff.
Right.
But no, I generally go out of my way not to complain about it because here's the thing. Number one, it could always be worse. Yeah. But number two, like I am so blessed. Right. I could be living with this condition in a third world country where there's no access to resources. That would be really hard. Right. And so I'm in a position where with my personality type and the fact that I'm a skeptic and I do have a higher IQ and the way my brain works, I'm like a walking Rolodex of all this information. It means I really can change the world. And the thing is when I was a kid, I knew I was born to change the world. And I'm going to do it. Like I will change the world. That's
what I hear you saying, if I'm not mistaken, that knowing that you've changed some lives for the better, all the pain and everything, discomfort that you've had to deal with in your eyes was worth dealing with.
No, it was not worth it. Like if I had to redo it, I would not do it again. Right.
Okay.
I don't want to say it was worth it, but what I want to say is that it's put me in a unique position to help people like no one else can. And I will take that responsibility seriously and do it to the best of my abilities. That's really what it is. You know what I mean? Because I don't think anybody's suffering is ever really worth like, oh, well, so-and-so benefited because you suffered. Like, I don't think that's
right. Okay.
But I do think that we can absolutely take these awful things and figure out how to turn it into something else. Right.
Well, I mean, looking at what you dealt with and the extent of it, and still you're able to bless other people I just find that absolutely amazing. And I mean, you're great to talk to. And, I would encourage anybody, get out there and research the Allergy Chef and learn as much as you can. And at least now, anybody watching, you've got a resource. Would you say there are many other people or groups in the country that are doing or is passionate about what you're doing as what you're doing?
I think there are. We're just doing it in different ways. So
Okay.
When it comes to like the extreme cases, I'm pretty much in my own little ball field.
Right.
When you're looking at just gluten-free, there's so many great organizations.
Okay.
When you're looking at just dairy-free, loads of great organizations. Like Milk Allergy Mom, love her to death. She does more than just milk, but that's her name because that's what she started with.
Okay.
But like she runs a support group, right? And she gets moms to do more than just focus on food because it's so easy to get wrapped up in like food. And so she gets moms to like learn how to relax and let's go exercise together and let's do these other things too.
Awesome.
You've got the nut-free moms group like Ashley down in LA. She's changing the world for every kid with a nut allergy, right?
Good.
You've got these pockets of people who have a very specific walk. And so they take that walk to then flip it around to make it better for everybody on the trail behind them. I just happen to be a person who has a very specific trail that one could either call incredibly narrow or one could call incredibly wide. Because I can relate to all these groups, it puts me in a different position, right?
Right. Well, I tell you what, it has been awesome talking to you, and I'm hoping we can do this again. But
yeah, we should.
I appreciate you taking your time to come on. And normally we do a half-hour show, but we knew this was going to be full of information. And I mean, there was no way we would be able to cover hardly anything in 30 minutes, I don't believe. But I thank you very much for what you do. I'm glad Anthony Griffo, my producer, connected us, and I look forward to us being able to do this again. And if there's ever anything we can do out here on the East Coast for you, please, I'm in Virginia. Don't hesitate to contact me.
You know what? I should come and visit you one day. I should just totally come and visit. Yeah.
Open the door and see you in your mask.
Right? Yeah.
I've got one too. It was this.
Hey, we could be twins. We could do like that selfie thing,
Just make sure you get a good seal. That's the main thing.
It is. It really is.
Yes, indeed.
It was such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, and God bless you, and we'll talk again.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Everybody, I know we had a longer show today, but that was a lot of information. And if you know anybody that's struggling, I think a lot of times we're dealing with things because of what we're putting in our body, and we don't know what's going on. We just don't feel quite right. But I think she was able to give us a good understanding of some of the things food can do to your body. The sad part is that everything did everything to her, it appears. But look how she took a bad situation, terrible situation, and was ready to just give up. And once she realized she was going to be here a little longer, she decided to impact some other lives while she made her world a little better. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Stay in touch on these Tuesday nights when the shows are coming out. And I thank everybody for watching. And Dad, thanks for watching. I love you.
This broadcast is produced by Griffo Productions.